You are listening to NewVision, OldWays, the podcast that explores timeless wisdom for the modern mind in a fun, relaxed, and most important, interactive way with you, the listener. I am your host, Tony Marinaccio, and let's get the episode started. Welcome, everyone, to another great episode of NewVision, OldWays. And, of course, I am your host, Tony Marinaccio. And before I get started, I have to say that I am thrilled at the response I received for episode 27. That is the last episode, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., His Way is still the best way. I so appreciate the engagement from many of you, and it certainly energizes me when I see all of the great comments and thoughts. It makes the work I put into these episodes so worth it, and I thank you for that. Also, as I did in the last episode, I will be including the verified Red Cross link in the show notes to help the people affected by the California wildfires. And as of the recording of this episode, they are still very much going on. So every penny counts, and many of these folks lost absolutely everything you could think of. So let's do what Americans do, help each other when things are difficult. And as I said, the link is in the show notes, and please donate if you can. Now, let's get to the subject of this episode. And I truly feel that what I will be discussing does not get nearly the attention that I think it should, even though these are incredibly important moments in our lives. I'm referring to the transitional moments where the real learning and growing happens, otherwise known as liminal spaces. These liminal spaces are what determines so much of what happens and when it happens for us. And I want to dig in deep and explore exactly why and how we can maximize these moments and turn them into a powerful tool to help us rise higher than we ever thought possible. I know these are lofty expectations, but I am up for this challenge. So without further ado, let's get episode 28 started. Growth in Life, Transitional Moments, the Power of Liminal Spaces.
Have you ever noticed just when you begin to feel ready and certain for what's next in life, like a big talk, for example, or whatever your version of a red carpet event is, something unexpected happens, like your fog machine gets vetoed. Or you get a new boss, you have a breakup, you go through a health scare, and all of a sudden, your clear path forward is no longer clear. You find yourself in a fog, and it's what I call a transition fog. Now that fog has you somewhere between the way it was and the way it will be. And the space in between is called uncertainty. And uncertainty, well, it brings more fog. And that fog is really the result of two things: our not knowing what's next and our lack of control, and the emotions that that stirs up. Our worry, our fear, and our anxiety. And with that, it limits our view. We can't see, and it begs the question, now what?
That was the founder of BKR Consulting, Brenda Reynolds, and she sets the stage for what we are going to work through in this episode, those transitional or liminal spaces in our lives. And I know when I think back on my own life, it becomes very apparent that the biggest changes in my life occurred because of what I did or didn't do during those transitional moments that in many instances seemed like the darkest moments in my life. But when I fought through that darkness and began to take action, giving myself the ability to see the opportunities around me, that's when the next phase of my life began to take shape, and I was on a new path. I will admit that when you are in those dark moments, it seems almost impossible to see the opportunities that present themselves to you because we can get blinded by obsessing about what happened to us. It can distort every part of our lives and make everything seem hopeless. But what if we had the tools to overcome the darkness and once again see the light and the opportunities around us? What if we can prepare ourselves for those sometimes difficult transitional moments that, let's face it, can happen at any time, whether we want them to or not. What if we could use those difficult times to help us carve out new and exciting paths that we would have never been on if we had stayed stuck in the depression and the anxiety of the dark times? Well, it's time to stop the what ifs. And in this episode, I am going to discuss exactly that, a preparation plan for us. So when we are faced with life's challenges and we are in those dark and paralyzing moments, we can reach in our toolbox and utilize what we pre-prepared for and face the transitional moments with confidence and power instead of fear and anxiety of the unknown. I want to first break down what is meant by liminal space. The word liminal comes from the Latin word limen, which means threshold. In anthropology, it refers to the transitional period during rituals where an individual is no longer in their old state, but yet hasn't transitioned into their new one. Think of it as the in-between space where one chapter is closing and another hasn't quite begun yet. You've probably experienced liminal spaces more times than you could possibly realize. Have you ever had a time in your life where you were in between jobs, or maybe between relationships? That's a big one. Or between homes, or maybe you were waiting for a big life change like graduation or a move or a new career. These are all liminal spaces. And they are places where you're not fully where you used to be, but you haven't yet arrived at where you are going. And there are, of course, many other examples of this, but at this point in the discussion, know that these happen at the time when we need to recognize when we are there quickly, because the key with many liminal spaces is that at many times they are uncomfortable, or maybe difficult, dark times, or times of great anxiety. It's in that discomfort that often keeps us from embracing these moments as powerful learning opportunities. But if we could shift our perspective, we could see that liminal spaces can actually be some of the richest times for personal development. Sometimes it's very clear that we are in a transitional moment, but sometimes it's not so clear. And we can slip into depression and anxiety before we know what hit us. So how do we recognize when we are in a liminal space? It might not be as obvious at first, but once you know what to look for, you will start to see them everywhere. One of the key characteristics of liminal spaces is that they often feel uncertain and unsettled. Think of a time when you were facing a big change and it felt like you couldn't see the finish line. The fear of the unknown can be crippling. I know there have been moments in my own life where it felt like I was deep in the fog between two shores, like I was standing on the edge of a foggy coastline. And on one side, there's the land I've known, the familiar shoreline that I've walked countless times. And on the other, the land is hidden in the mist, distant and uncertain. This fog is the liminal space. Recognizing liminality can be like noticing you're in the fog where you can't see clearly, but you know you're at a point of transition, halfway between two worlds. Sometimes that fog turns so thick and dark, you're not even sure there is the other side. I know I've been there too, and it could be a scary place to be, but the good news is there are things we could do to make sure we are prepared for those difficult moments. And an important thing to remember is these spaces don't have clear markers. So don't get discouraged when you didn't see it right away. This is not an exact science for sure. For example, there are times that you will feel like you are no longer who you used to be, but you haven't fully embraced who you want to become. It may take time to realize you are changing, and that's okay. The point is to catch it as early in the process as you can and begin to take action. There are several things we could do to prepare ourselves for these important moments. The easy thing to say to yourself is, I'll deal with it when it happens. Well, I would think that most of us have been blindsided by life's events. And when you get blindsided, we don't always make the best decisions, do we? No, I know I don't. So to me, it's like anything else, that when you want to be good at something, you need to prepare and teach yourself that when these events happen, and you are in the state of fog or darkness or helplessness, and you have no idea what to do next, you'll be able to catch yourself and begin to utilize the emotional tools you have and get to the other side much quicker and with much more confidence than you ever thought possible. One of the first things I would suggest to do, and I know I have certainly touched on this in several episodes, but it is so vitally important to practice meditation, to get in touch with your inner self and your inner voice. Getting alone every day, if possible, even for a few minutes, and listening to that inner voice will help guide you to an understanding of who you really are, what you fear most, and what you feel your limitations are. If you can be honest with yourself with this, you can then work on those issues and begin to feel more confidence that you can handle whatever comes your way. It's very easy to lose focus in the transitional times. But if you could repeat to yourself over and over and over again to focus on the process, not the outcome, it will take away or greatly reduce the fear of the unknown and allow you to move forward by taking actionable steps without ever concerning yourself with a particular outcome. Often, people feel pressure to reach the next phase as quickly as possible, but liminal spaces require patience. The transition itself is just as important as the destination. That's very, very, very important. Shifting focus from the outcome to the process allows you to appreciate the learning and the growth happening in the in-between spaces. Another tool to put in your toolbox is to make sure you understand that there will be meaning in the pause of life. The idea of thresholds implies that something significant is about to unfold. Whether it's a new job, a new relationship, or even a new self-concept that excites you, yet it is scary when you're faced with a change. Remembering that this space could be rich with possibilities can help you appreciate that opportunities for transformation that await you on the other side of liminality can be exciting and bring you to places you never expected to go. Having this mindset will help guard you against feelings of anxiety about what is next. This brings us to another key factor. That's the idea of embracing ambiguity. In liminal spaces, clear answers or directions might not be available immediately. In this day and age of modern technology and instant gratification, it may be a difficult concept to grasp, but accepting this uncertainty can provide relief. Trust that the lack of clarity is temporary and that this phase will eventually give way to something new. Practicing mindfulness meditation and presence can be particularly helpful to manage anxiety about the unknown. And this has to happen with a mindset of flexibility. Liminal spaces are transformative, and part of that transformation is a call to flexibility. Whether it's being flexible with your time, your plans, or your sense of identity, being open to change allows you to move fluidly through this period. Limiting rigid expectations can prevent frustrations during transitions. I know for myself, no one is harder on me than I am on myself. I have a habit of beating myself up over any mistake I make because I have such a lofty and rigid expectation for myself. But when I step back and allow myself to be more flexible with my expectations, things seem to feel more positive, and celebrating any success along the way becomes a more joyful experience than putting myself through the ringer whenever something goes wrong. Being flexible can also lead to creating new rituals or routines. I know this was key for me after I went through a divorce. I used this tool to create opportunities for growth. During periods of transition, old routines may no longer feel relevant and new ones might not yet be in place. In these cases, you could consciously create small rituals or daily practices that ground you, whether it's a morning walk, a new creative habit, or any activity that provides structure in a changing environment. Sometimes, liminal spaces happen not because of external circumstances, but because of internal pauses. A moment when something deep within you is asking for reflection and reconsideration. In these moments, recognizing liminality means stepping back, noticing your internal state, and acknowledging the creative potential in this pause. It's a moment where you can take a breath, let your thoughts and your feelings settle, and then decide what creative steps to take next. What I have discovered is that when I am in the transitional moments, it's truly a time when you can unlock your creativity. When we're forced out of our comfort zones and into new, unfamiliar situations, our brains have to get creative to survive. Think about a time when you were between jobs or in a new city. You probably had to come up with new solutions to problems that have never occurred before. This forced creativity is something you can tap into during liminal spaces. If you embrace the uncertainty You'll often find that you are able to think outside the box in ways you didn't know you were capable of. But if you did not practice for these moments and were not prepared properly, that creativity would have never been exposed, and depression and anxiety would have been an ugly road to go down. So unlocking your creativity can also help to reveal our true desires for our lives. As I've discussed already, liminal spaces create a gap between where you've been and where you are going. And it's in that gap that you could truly begin to understand what you want out of life. And if embraced, can be some of the most informative and exciting parts of the journey. Without the familiar structures around you, you might realize that what you thought you wanted isn't what you needed at all. These spaces give you the freedom to dream bigger, make bolder choices, and decide what you really want your life to look like. These are the moments that you should not fear, because if you could power through these times and keep your mind open to the possibilities, wonderful things can happen to you. Far too many times in my own life, and I've seen it in so many others as well, that I know that these times in life were full of despair and fear when most of what we feared never came true. So embrace these times, enjoy the journey, and let it take you where you were meant to be. And when you get to the other side, you can take a moment to reflect on how far you have come. Adjustments in life can always be made, and the proper use of reflection can be crucial at these times. You can use this time to re-examine your values, your goals, and even your purpose. Being in a liminal space or fresh out of one allows you the time to hit the pause button on the rush of life and take stock of where you are and where you are still going. Reflection helps us realize that the patience we had was well worth it, and in that, we can also realize that we have built up a strong resilience as well. Very important. Liminal spaces test our patience. You can't rush through a transition, and sometimes you just have to sit with the discomfort. But if you let yourself sit with it long enough, you'll start to notice learning and growth. Resilience is built in these moments. By learning how to hold space for yourself while you wait and are creating the events that will unfold, will build your resilience for any future issues that come your way. You will find that you can handle more uncertainty than you thought possible, and that's a lesson that will serve you well in every area of life. Remember, it's okay not to have it all figured out. You don't need to rush the process of change. Trust that in time, you will emerge from the liminal space with new wisdom, new clarity, and a new sense of self. So the next time you find yourself in an in-between space, instead of resisting it, take a moment to reflect on what it's teaching you. You will come out the other side with a new understanding of who you are and what great things you are truly capable of. But, and here's the big but on this, be on guard for something that can easily derail your progress, your confidence, and your self-esteem. And that's letting the negative words and actions of the people around you stop your progress. I am sure we have all experienced it in some form or fashion, where we have a dream and others want to crush it because they are unwilling themselves to go after their own dreams. So they have no problem crushing yours. So you stay right where you are. It makes them feel better about themselves. So are they jealous? Are they just plain mean? Are they convinced that if you succeed and they don't, it will make them look bad? Honestly, it really doesn't matter. If they won't discuss it and they keep that vengeful attitude, we need to rise above it. Like an eagle, when they sense danger, they fly higher. And that's what we need to do, fly higher. We cannot let the poison from others get into our minds and stop us from accomplishing what we were meant to do. We need to stay focused on what we feel our destiny is. Because remember, as much as you love those people, it is still your life to live. No one can live it for you. So many dreams are crushed because we are so worried about what someone else will think, especially when we are in those liminal spaces where doubt can easily creep in or even be pushed in. It's easy to get sucked into someone else's vision of how you are supposed to live your life. And it can even lead to them using what is sometimes referred to as dark psychology, the psychology of manipulation. And in the next episode, I will dig deep into this unofficial branch of psychology known as dark psychology. It's an important topic that is so relevant in today's world. So please tune in to the next episode for that. It will be worth it. And as for liminal spaces, I hope that after this episode, we now know that navigating through life's transitions involves recognizing that it is a temporary phase that often, offers opportunities for growth, reinvention, and reflection. By embracing uncertainty, being open to change, and using rituals and self-reflection as tools, we can not only survive liminality, but we can thrive through it, emerge stronger and more self-aware, understanding that the discomfort of this in-between phase is a necessary part of personal transformation, can help us all approach liminal spaces not as something to fear, but as something to engage with consciously and creatively. Again, you can do this. Have faith in the process and don't ever let fear be your guide. You will get to the other side with more confidence and power than you ever thought possible. It's in you. It's in all of us. Your life is worth the effort. So what do you think about this or any episode? I would love to find out. And here is where to get a hold of the show and let us know. These are in the show notes, but as always, here they are. There is a new link that you could click on that will allow you to donate to the show and show your support. By donating what you can, it will allow me to book guests and cover costs, and anything will help. You can obviously cancel anytime. So very safe and secure also as well. You could also message the show from each episode on your various platforms. Just look for the send us a text message link and you can shoot me a message that way. If that doesn't work for you, you can email us at newvisionoldways@gmail.com. Again, it's newvisionoldways@gmail.com. You can find us on what was Twitter, now X, at newvisionoldway. Remember, there's no S at that. At newvision Old Way. Check out the New Vision Old Ways YouTube channel. Just type in New Vision, one word, Old Ways, one word. Please subscribe. It is free and will show support for the show, and it really means a lot. And of course, it'll help grow the show on YouTube and also on Facebook as well. Same thing, New Vision, one word, Old Ways, one word, podcast, and you should easily be able to find us. And as a reminder, these are growing platforms for us and expanding all the time. So we need your help to get the flow going with the community. But last but not least, if you do me a huge favor and subscribe to us, like us, follow us, leave a review on whatever platform you found us on, that would be so appreciated. And that will also help us secure guests that we will be booking in the future. So we are now, again, firmly in season 3, and this season is going to have a few surprises along the way, and I truly hope that you will enjoy it. I can't wait to get your input. I also can't wait until we get together for the next episode of New Vision Old Ways. And until then, stay true to yourself, stay informed, and stay empowered.
But the most important thing is,
this and all episodes of New Vision Old Ways have been written, engineered, and produced by Tony Marinaccio and TKM Productions.